So let's,
There's Nita.
okay. Hi, Juanita, how are you?
Oh my gosh, there's my president on the phone. What should I do?
Always take the call from the president. Turn
All
off
right,
your
I'm gonna
camera.
mute myself.
Right, says the president. Okay, so we had a, you have a copy of the minutes. And Anne just wanted to make sure that the motions in the minutes reflected the intent. And so in particular, Roz, if you could look over the minutes to make sure that the motion is correct.
I am reviewing it right now.
Okay.
And we might want to say represented by the F&D committee members, just so that there's no misunderstanding for the first motion. Let's see. And just that, I think that's it.
Okay, so just give it to me one more time and wait, it's importing into the pages. Okay, so it says put, okay, so the set under the second motion, you want it to read propose that the members of the F&D committee?
No, under the first motion, finance and development, the first proposed an internal F&D committee campaign for the remainder of the FY21 to raise at least $1,000 from each COF class represented on the F&D committee or represented by the F&D committee members. I know it's repetitive, but because the first one is just for F&D committee members, and then the second one, so here, I'll drop it in the chat.
I got it. I made the change.
And the second one looks fine.
Okay, great. All right. So are there any additional corrections to the minutes?
Hey, Rich, if we can just add he under outreach and engagement too, just towards the middle of the paragraph. Start of the sentence, he.
Yeah, he reported that the committee has been busy working.
Hey, that's it. Thanks, Rich.
Okay, great. Any other additions or corrections? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Great. Second?
Second.
Great. So let me just, okay. Roz and Jim. All those in favor, please. Oh, any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, great. Let's move to committee reports. Professional development, you're on.
Okay, so in our last meeting, we had kind of a long, wide-ranging discussion about a few things. Nita showed up at the meeting very briefly at the start and had made some suggestions relative to some of the things we've been recently talking about having some events following or during the middle of the year, such as late March and possibly July, and that's what some of our discussion focused on. We also talked a lot about the topics, but the upshot of it is that we're kind of working on agenda items for the Council Fellows Networking event, I think is what we're now calling it, right? To try to reach a wider audience. There's a certain set of people who decided to never go back into administration. There are those people who are in retirement or near retirement, and there may be some benefit to them. So And then, of course, there's the people who stayed, but maybe diverted out of higher education precisely and into sort of the support industries, like search consultants and the like. So we're looking at trying to create programming for a wider set of people. And this was also based on the conversation I had with Richard. I can't remember the precise date, but it was a couple of weeks prior to that meeting. Richard had intended on coming to our last meeting, but was called away at the last second by, the typical sort of call away. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at trying to do some sort of recognition type of event to try to see if we can drum up more interest from people who are further along, because based on some of our prior surveying, we noticed that the vast majority of attendance in the Council of Fellows event is within about the first 7 years of having been a fellow, and then it sort of drops off dramatically beyond that. And so some of it was doing some things that a couple of us are working on relative to 5 and 10 year type of recognition, like let's recognize people who have been fellows for certain periods of time, and possibly even working on some sort of an award structure for people who are performing service to the Council of Fellows. Although that's really, all of that is in a very sort of initial state. We also wanted to work on maybe archiving some of our information materials somewhere. We're hoping we can use the ACE Engage, but we need a little bit more information basically about ACE Engage, because I'm not really sure what the status of that is. I don't even know whether it's available yet after the revamps that's getting worked on. And that's probably about where we are at this point as far as getting ready. I should say I also shared the call for proposals and mentioned about how we need to make a proposal if we want to be a part of the actual official ACE annual meeting.
Two kind of comments from the ACE side. Since I started with ACE when I was 12, we did used to have anniversary classes at the Council Fellows weekend. So it was just kind of a, same thing that you kind of mentioned, kind of recognizing fellows who had, 5-year, 10-year, 20, kind of the denomination can be in whatever increments you all select, but kind of giving a certificate or something like that. But that kind of drew people from classes that were further out. So something to consider, build on, change. And as far as ACE Engage, they are currently working on a 2.0 structure. So it exists, and there are a few of us in there now. Their hope is to kind of do I believe a full launch in the fall, but don't quote me on that one since I'm not part of that team. But there is a site, it does exist. Trying to make it more user friendly so that people are receiving emails or alerts when people respond to posts, since that was the issue with the original version, that there were no notifications at all. And since I signed up for it, it does, you can select whether you receive a response on every post or you do a daily digest, which I would opt for the daily digest, which works great. It sends you an email in the evening, kind of here's everything that happened while you weren't online. So it's coming. I don't know, like I said, at what point in the kind of ACE ecosystem of time when that will be.
Okay, yeah, one quick comment about that. One of the things we've been struggling with is how to sort of archive Council of Fellows information, because I had offered, but it's like it's on my own Google Drive at University of Michigan, and it's not necessarily accessible by everybody, and we don't know whether there's a way to be maybe we can store things within the ACE Engage platform, but I'm not 100% sure that's the best idea either. And does anybody have any thoughts on that?
So Stephen, F&B had been using AC Engage to archive all of our meeting minutes, the strategic plan for our committee, those kinds of things. So it was really nice because members of the committee were added as members of that group. And so you could go in there and access it, and I could look at the notes from several years ago. That said, now that ACE Engage first one isn't available anymore, we have a little bit of a problem because all of our stuff is there. So we're following up with that right now to see about the availability of all the materials we had archived. But because you're right, otherwise we wouldn't have had a way to sort of pass stuff from one group to another. So it was definitely handy.
Yeah, FYI on that, somebody should be reaching out to you. I feel like I'm the point person for everybody else's work at ACE. The information is available. They have archived it and they still have access. They are supposed to be getting back to you and Karen about that. But the short answer I received is, yeah, we have it.
So I'll just say for me, it was really handy. And I think for the committee members, especially as new ones came on board, for them to see sort of what we have been talking about.
Hey, Nita, along those lines, we just had the handoff from Adolfo on the Outreach and Engagement Committee, and we'd be open to that as well. So those records can live in perpetuity from Outreach and Engagement too.
Yeah, I invited my colleague, Crystal Andrews, who's kind of leading the Engage effort on our side, to come to the next meeting that we're having of the committee, so that you have questions, she has answers. But to even talk about, she had mentioned putting you all on Engage. So I think, having her here and you all can ask her your questions. So I think let's plan for August. Do we have a meeting in August? I assume we do. So I'll just let her know, she can come to that one just so she can speak to kind of some of the Engage happenings at ACE.
Okay, great. Anything else?
I think that's about it for right now.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Outreach and engagement. We have 2 items, the Fidelity Mentor Award and the online annual meeting opportunities.
Yes, thank you. And we also covered the opportunity to present at the annual conference. We gave an update on the fellows process and the placement of fellows. And the 2 agenda items that we added today on the Fidelity Mentor Award, we were curious, Nita, it was raised that there was a question of how many mentees a mentor had to have in order to be considered for the mentorship award. Apparently 2 numbers might have been floating at one point, and we wanted to confirm with you the precise number of mentees required for a mentor nomination.
Current number is 4. And I think that is, a few years ago, there was discussion about 3, and that did not go very far. But I think, the problem that we have been cycling into is that we are refurbishing a lot of old packages because, new nominations aren't coming in because the parameters are what they are. So there could be people that were, mentor 3 fellows, and based on those parameters aren't eligible. So,
and does the mentor award allow for both people who have nominated and hosted, or is it just hosted a fellow?
Just hosted.
All right.
So the parameters of that award, Rich, you've been around forever. The council fellows wrote the parameters for the mentor award. The only caveat that ACE, requires is kind of the member institution piece.
Right.
So I think that, you know, whatever revisions there are, sit with you all and, you know, whatever that looks like.
Right. Well, I'm been around forever because I was a fellow when I was 6, as opposed to Juanita, who has started.
I'm just
when
saying,
she
we
was
were young,
12.
prodigies.
We were young. So at one point, Jim, what I will say is there was a conversation about, you know, not just hosting, but if you nominated a fellow as well, that should count in the total. It never got really changed in the regulations. There is you know, because there is some mentoring that you do when you nominate a fellow. Obviously, you're talking with them throughout the year if you're really doing your job, and you have to have a project for when they to implement their project when they come back. So there really is sort of some mentoring that goes on if you nominate a fellow as well. So, you know, again, you know, if the committee wants to revisit that, I think, you know, the fact that we are recycling old packages is important to notice. And, you know, it's, and also let's just be frank that, you know, the presidencies used to last 10 or 12 years, and now the national average is 6. So, you know, it's harder to get 3 or 4 fellows in the course of a presidency if you're changing institutions at the rate the presidents are changing institutions. So, you know, if the committee wants to revisit that and bring it back, that would require the full board approval at the full board meeting if you want to make that recommendation.
Yeah, and just as a PS to what you just said, Rich, is that it's the total, not just mentor by institution. So if you mentor fellows across 3 different institutions or 4 different, you know, it counts as the overall number, not specifically tied to when you were president of institution X or Y.
I would also support looking at categories so that maybe we split the baby in some way, that we have those who have mentored, those who have nominated, and maybe they're 2 categories. But I would very much be open to us looking at that and asking the committee to revisit, because I agree with you, Rich, that there's some opportunity there. We are finding ourselves in a bit of a stuck place.
And the only, I won't say pushback, but the only ACE perspective that I will add to that recommendation, Kenya, is that every year it seems that they are trying to reduce the number of awards. So the reason why the mentor award has kind of had that kind of staying power, I guess, at being where it is in the annual meeting is because it's one president. It's the kind of, you're on the stage doing the plenary with the, so I think if we broke it out, they may punt that location to a less visible position in,
because it dilutes it in some way, and it could be diminished in terms of its visibility.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's certainly opportunities for us to sort of recognize presidents who are engaged in this work that, you know, and think about what are those opportunities. And really, as we're trying to draw presidents, you know, back into the fold, if you know, ask them to speak or give them an award, chances are they're going to show up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so the thing that you can think about, the 2 things right off the top of my head would be at the COF weekend proper or at the annual COF reception at the annual meeting.
Sure.
So, you know, those are kind of areas that we control.
Opportunities there. Yeah, I get that.
And need a follow-up question on that. If they're reducing the number of awards and we do that recognition, is that still in alignment, or is that a possibility that we could do that recognition and keep the award primary, the Fidelity Mentor Award?
You know, the conversations are not that we have been having at ACE about the award has not been about number or, you know, like I said, the only requirement that ACE has is that it's an ACE member institution. Ted has been very clear about that. We get it, but nothing specifically about, oh, they had to have mentored 20 fellows, or like those particular nuances have not even come up.
Right. But I think what Nita is trying to point out is if we suddenly decided that we wanted to award 3 Fidelity Mentor Awards, chances are ACE would say, we're not giving you that much airspace. And, you know, but
Right,
as long as we keep it to one, I mean, it also helps us that it's named, you know, Fidelity, you know, that helps us as well.
right. And the dollar value that they attach to that.
Great. Yep. Jim, you had online opportunities as well?
Yes, and thank you. Well, Kenya, thank you for that recommendation. We'll go back and we'll talk about that for sure. The online opportunities actually came up in the discussion on the annual conference. We noted that at the annual conference, it was entirely face-to-face. And the suggestion came back in twofold. One, are there any opportunities at the annual conference that could be online? Or two, in the future, has ACE considered post-COVID moving into a world where the conference might be online? And we may have anticipated that, but I wanted to raise it because that came from the floor.
Do you see my gray hair? Look close.
Neither one of us are going to acknowledge any gray hair because I keep mine short not to acknowledge it.
This has been so ACE. Again, it has been a very interesting and eye-opening past couple of weeks. They are fully in person. There will be no hybrid components. They're, you know, and they are expecting that there will be a decline in participation by at least 50%. So they are not offering us any ability to, even with the women's network and with the fellows, to do anything that is potentially hybrid. They are like, you know, you're doing it in tandem with the annual meeting, so you follow our rules. So that's kind of where we are locked in. We have had several meetings about it where several of us on the committee have advocated for a hybrid model. Gray hair. So it just, I think planning for in person is probably the best way to go, at least for this year, for the annual meeting. I think kind of going back to what Steve said about the kind of opportunities later on could be virtual. But I think, you know, for as much as we are tied to the annual meeting for right now, in person it is.
Yeah, I will when I do the chair's report and I talk about my conversation with Ted Mitchell, I can add more to that conversation.
Hey, Rich, that's helpful. And we had one additional item from the floor that was a suggestion of the possibility of a LinkedIn network amongst the fellows. Has that ever been talked about, perhaps?
Some of the classes do, but not as a holistic network of fellows. It's a good idea.
Rich, thank you. And Carlos, anything to add? Did I miss anything?
Okay, great. Roz, you are on finance and development.
Yes. So one of the things I was going to bring up, we've already kind of talked about with the ACE Engage platform. So Nita, thank you for letting us know. And just the opportunity, that's my daughter laughing in the background, if you guys heard that. The next thing at our meeting, we also just, I think we mentioned to you before that the leadership at ACE, the development leadership at ACE has been changing and in transition for a while now. So we are scheduling a meeting with their newest leadership. We are also working on our fundraising goal, which has a September 30th deadline of this year for the F&D committee members to raise $1,000 from their classes. And I don't have a list of the classes represented. Apologize for that. Didn't think it that just popped in my mind that I should probably mention which classes those are. Do happen to know 1920 is one of the classes and 1819 is another one of the classes. Next, one of the things that came up in our discussion, and Nita, you know this, looking at other platforms to actually receive donations Venmo, Zelle, just because of the ease of use of doing it. And potentially, for example, my class uses GroupMe to communicate, and therefore, if you get a ping on GroupMe, don't forget to donate for ACE fundraising. You could just as easily go to your Zelle app or your Venmo app and take care of the donation right there. So that is another topic we will bring up with when we meet with the development leadership at ACE to see what kinds of options we have. To that point, Nita did remind us that ACE as an organization is not necessarily one that is on the cutting edge of technology and technology platforms, and that we may not want to hold our breath with that, but with the encouragement, we're hoping that that will be an option.
Just a PS to that, it's like all over the place today. And I won't cross into Rich. You will probably talk about your conversation with Bathsheba a little bit as well. But she and I kind of had a pre-meeting to your meeting with her. And so I did mention to her that the committee was interested in doing kind of something virtual or QR code or something like that. And so she didn't seem resistant to it. She thought it was a good idea. Now it's the infrastructure on the other part of that she will have to fight that out with a fellow vice president in finance. But I don't based on her kind of response, I didn't get that this would be much pushback. But again, been wrong before.
Well, that's exciting because that would be really handy, especially as once again, we just have different platforms that our classes stay in touch with each other.
Yep.
A lot of them are affiliated with mobile apps, and to have this as an option would be great. So I think that's it. We're moving to monthly meetings, especially now that we are trying to kick off a serious campaign to raise money for FY22 for the class gifts. And yes, Rich, we did share the gauntlet that you threw down for your class, that you guys have already met your goal and target with your class has met its target with your commitment. So the race is on.
Great, excellent. Anything else, Roz?
That's it.
Great. So I have just 3 quick items to report on. The first is I do have a date set up with Sherry to go over the data that was presented based on the survey. I have a couple of questions after I've analyzed the data. So hopefully that meeting is happening, I want to say in 2 weeks. Yes, the 29th. So that meeting will be scheduled. So at our August meeting, I should have a plan on how we want the committees to discuss the data and bring back recommendations to the full board meeting so we can hand something over to ACE leadership at the end of the annual meeting. I had a great hour conversation with Ted Mitchell talking about the fellows program and where he felt it had great strength, where he felt that the fellows program needed to retool and rethink, and ultimately how the alumni organization could support those efforts. So of course he was very interested in the survey data, and I told him where we were in terms of discussing that and getting back to ACE on how we could support fellows 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10, and post 10 years out based on that survey. We also talked a lot about the Engage Network and how do we expand the programming for current and former fellows in a virtual format. And Jim, at that time, that's when he said, we really want to keep the annual meeting in person, but use the Engage platform for regional summits or for professional opportunity professional development opportunities for like the fellows program or the women's network, and kind of use that. So we have programming going throughout the year. So I thought that was great. He also mentioned the possibility of the chair of the Council of Fellows sitting on the board of ACE, to provide a better connection. I don't know whether that will happen or not. That's early on. So we're just gonna.
Do you see my gray hair? I have been making this case for the past couple of years. And it's
Well,
gone nowhere.
right. Well, you should feel he heard you. He's at least talking about it now. But I don't know where that's going to go. So I will, when I do my data meeting with Sherry, I'll say, hey, this was mentioned. You know, I would like to do that. You know, I will point out that he did wear a New Jersey City University hat to a meeting with the president of William Patterson. So needless to say, there are 2 hats going to him that say William Patterson going forward. But I think it was a great conversation. One of the things he did say, and this would be to outreach and engagement in particular, is that he's really looking for the alumni network to get more involved in recruiting fellows. He feels that a lot of the marketing and the push comes from ACE, and he felt that if we used our network, that the pool, the application pool might be more robust. So it is something that we should really begin to think about as a fellows, an alumni organization going forward. I'm not sure what that looks like, but he did mention it. I'll stop there and take any questions.
This is more of a comment, you might say, than a question, but what you just said kind of jogged a little bit of a memory. Something I didn't include is we've also started talking a little bit about doing a better job of onboarding fellows, recent fellows, because, you know, I related my own anecdotal experience, which was when we were at one of our beginning of the year meetings, the prior class was at one of their end of the year meetings, and people just said, hey, why don't you just come on down to the meeting of the professional development committee? And that's kind of how I got involved in the professional development committee. It's extremely informal, and it's not really working that well. You know, so if we're going to be asked to do more involvement in recruiting fellows, then maybe we need to do a better job of recruiting fellows into these committees and into the Council of Fellows itself.
Right. It was.
Can I just add an amendment to that? The past 2 years, so when Michelle was chair and when Denise was chair, we had both of them speak. And I think, Rich, you were part of one of those. I can't remember. But to do that kind of introduction to the Council of Fellows, because you are right. I mean, they don't know who the Council of Fellows is. It's you know. So we have tried to do that. We had not scheduled it for this year, but I think this will come with kind of what we're doing with the curriculum, kind of spacing out some things that occur in September, October, November. So we can definitely schedule time for, you know, the Council of Fellows chairs to kind of introduce and acclimate the current class to the network.
Right.
Because annual meeting is too late, I think, at that point.
Yeah, it is. I think, you know, when I meet with Sherry, one of the things I'm going to ask is a touch point in the opening seminar and a touch point at mid-year, and see if we can't figure out how we might do a better job of onboarding. When back in the, you know, dark ages, when I was 5 as a fellow, it was what we call the forced march to the committee meetings. You were expected as part of the annual meeting to go to a committee meeting. You got to pick whatever one you wanted to go to, but you had to go to them, and attendance was taken. So if you were not there, it was brought to your attention that you weren't there. So I don't think we want to go back to that, but I think we do need to sort of figure out a way to engage, you know, folks, and I'll talk with Sherry about that. So I did have a great conversation with Bathsheba, which she indicated to me, Roz, that she would be communicating with you and Karen directly. And then that way, anything that you brought to the committee already sort of had her okay. So it wasn't, I think that's better rather than having it go from you to me, to her, and then, back. I mean, that just seems crazy. So I told her about the 2 things that we had already launched. She was fine with that. I told her that if she needed me to engage with specific asks around the fellows program, I was happy to do that. I was also happy to call former fellows who were presidents who hadn't given to see if I couldn't, cajole them back into the giving mode. She did what she was very clear that the Council of Fellows Fund was the focus, and less so the institutional grants in the Marlene Ross Fund for the future. So we need to be mindful of the fact that ACE will be focusing on that as opposed to the other 2. It doesn't mean that they're off the table, but it just means that that's going to be ACE's focus.
Which is okay. That's interesting. That seemed to be a different conversation than what she and I had. Because we talked about the diversity scholarships and the need to get institutions from underrepresented areas, which is the Fund for the Future and the Marlene Ross Fund.
Like I said, she didn't take them off the table. She just didn't, at least from my conversation from her, I didn't glean that they were going to be the focus.
I guess we will get clarification when we meet with her.
And just as an aside, but kind of related, is in Steve, Carlos, Jim, I sent you all an email earlier about the annual meeting and kind of the breakdown of because they're forcing me to give them a response today. But I think as part of the registration process that we did this year, we will continue so that people can donate to the Marlene Ross Fund. So I think as we're encouraging people to register, we also can encourage them to make their donations there. So at least it's kind of a one and done. It's all in the same place and you don't have to log out and then go somewhere else to make a donation.
Nita, can I just ask a follow-up on that? With Roz's recruitment from the classes, not those who are on the committee, but from the individual classes, is there a way for us to, do we determine if there's a way for us to click or to fill in class of 2011? And should that be directed then to any of the recruiting initiatives or to the Council of Fellows Fund?
Yeah, I don't think you all have to worry about that because all of that information comes back to me. And so I kind of know where you all were as far as being a fellow. So you don't have to worry about noting it because, Advancement gets a copy of it, but I do as well. So I can kind of say, here are the classes of people just because it's just easier to do it that way. I think there is still the notes area in there, but I would not, it's an extra step for you all. If you want to do it, great, but not needed.
And that means any donation then would then count, which is the.
Yeah, I think, once we set we only have a couple of more weeks before the end of ACE's fiscal year. So if I recall Karen mentioning something in the Finance and Development Committee meeting about doing kind of for the committee, having them make their donations before the end of the year. But the next kind of campaign is kind of open to everybody where there's that kind of by class charge. So I think, that we can plan for that as opposed to trying to get it in for this fiscal year.
That was our goal, Nita. To really, for us as a committee, just because we've been talking about this for a while, to sort of just do our sort of under the wire, but to have a more thoughtful, intentional engagement for the FY22 class gift campaign. That said, Jim, that is also something that we talked about in the committee meeting, like how do we want to make sure we can indicate which class you are a member of. That said, Nita, it may be a handy feature. We know that you know us all, but that might be a handy feature just in the future as we are thinking about any donation that, any way you want to identify yourself. as a former fellow. To me, that would make sense. You know, I think with a lot of our institutions, we probably do have something where you say class of, 1966 or whatever, just so folks can I assume that's a handy feature to have in general with fellows to know which class they were in.
Yeah, that won't happen anytime soon.
Gotcha, understood.
It is-
But
it
you
is-
know what? It's just like getting the COF chair on the bigger board. You just keep on asking and keep on asking until, no, I say bigger board, the other board. You just keep on asking until potentially it happens. Eventually somebody will think it's a good idea and make it happen.
Sure.
Yeah. Hope springs eternal.
Roz, I'm using up too much airtime today, but quick question. Do you want us to push for the class gifts before September 30th, or would you like them to be part of the next year's campaign?
Next year's campaign.
Got it. Okay.
Keep me posted on how I can help. Right.
Yeah, and Roz, I think Bathsheba did send an email and she copied me on it to you and Karen. So I think she's trying to set that up.
Okay, super. Okay, Juanita, any other updates from ACE? Fellow placement?
Other than, okay, somebody's trying to call me through Microsoft Teams. Is that
No, it
right?
was me. It was
Oh,
me.
okay. I was like,
right.
Other than the fact of, like I said, if Steve and Jim, if you all can look at that information about the annual meeting. So my plan is to go back to the registration fee that we charged in 2019, which was $300 for participation. And I don't know, I believe you said we were going to Settese, Carlos, but I built in kind of a fee for people to participate in that because we would have to get a bus and for people to kind of still pay for those consultations. If you look at what I sent, and I can probably send it to all of you, I don't know why I didn't do that, is the goal, what I was thinking is we put all of the kind of optional activities on that Friday so that the focus of Saturday is just the Council Fellows Weekend proper without having people go in and out to their consultations. If there is, I think, somebody missed an appointment or, that can kind of be the makeup session. But I think focusing all the energy and attention on that Saturday for the COF Weekend proper is, I would advise that, especially since participation will be lower. I don't want to remove people from an already low presentation, that's my 2 cents on that. So to keep everything, so the campus visit and the consultations on that Friday, 10 to 4-ish, allow for people to come back on the bus wherever they're coming from. And then there's that evening session that you all usually do that Friday with the search consultants. I didn't name it. I just said Friday session, opening session. So that's kind of my take on that, just to keep things very simple and for the people at ACE so that they don't have to think about space. And so, yeah.
Okay, and how is the placement process coming?
So I saw your email. So he and one other fellow, are TBD, but we're nearly done.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, so Juanita, Risa is still confused as to which meetings she shows up to and which meetings she doesn't. So we might have to just go back and, send an email to everyone saying, these are the full board meetings. These are the executive board meetings. Here's who attends full board. Here's who it's, I know.
No, and that was purely my fault because it was, when Ann sent me the information and I sent it out, and so it's on people's calendars now.
Right.
I got a text message this morning. I'm not at this meeting, am I? So it's fine. It's me and it's fine.
Okay,
I can't be perfect 100% of the time. 99.5% though, I'm good.
all right, okay,
So because I think I still have those on the calendar. So I'll do that for the next like early August so that people know that the next one is not for you. Take it off your calendar. But I have been telling people who've asked that the full board is in November.
okay, great, great. Anne,
I
you're
have
muted.
I have a couple of email address and location updates for us all that that might be helpful. And along those, as you resend those, and I'm happy to help with all that if you need to. The other question though that springs from that is how much work would it be to update all of the classes, emails and current affiliations? I feel like, I know that's a huge job, but I feel like there are a lot of people who've moved and some of our email lists are a little bit out of date. I know I'm a prime offender to having just moved. So I don't know,
the
maybe
fellows
that's,
program has one staff person.
I know, maybe we can collaborate on that,
Yeah,
Nita.
well, and the challenge is that it's still even beyond that. I'm being facetious, but the problem is because of where the fellows data is sitting is in a very old database that has yet to be migrated. We have been conversing about this at ACE for years, and because that database is
Since I was
tied
5.
to the directory, right? Since you were 5. And it's tied to the directory. So even if we use the ACE's kind of new CRM, it's not tied to the directory. So all the information has to be put into the old database, which is breaking daily. So it is hard to get good data into a bad database. So that has always been the challenge, and any update can't be made by me. It has to be submitted by me to IT, and then they go through. So it's a whole process. My colleague Crystal, who will be at the next meeting about Engage, she and I have been trying to tag team this issue because it's a nightmare. I mean, I will be fully honest. It is a nightmare because we know I have a whole inbox, a folder that has job updates. Where am I putting it? Where am I putting it? So
Yeah,
it's a challenge.
right. I only say I've been connected to the board since 2005, 2006, and we've been talking about this since 2005, 2006.
The
So
database has been a conversation for.
well, I mean, really,
12
I mean,
years.
come on. I mean,
Yep.
In 16 years, they can't get it together. Come on,
Yeah.
ECE.
Yep.
Right.
And so, the issue that we're having is nomenclature. So people, I will say, the fellows aren't in CRM, and they say the fellows are in CRM. See, look, there's Rich Heldobler, and there's Kenya Ayers Palmore, and I'm like, right, but show me where they were a fellow. So you all are in there as people, but
Sure.
you're not in there as fellows.
As fellows.
So everything that connects you to the program, mentor, nominator, donations, all of that's in the old database. So if somebody were to look up any of you now, they would see your current title, contact, all of that, but nothing about your fellows experience, which, so yeah, it's a work in progress. And every chance I have to mention it,
well, I mean, if it's 16 years old, I would argue that it's a work, but it's not in progress.
Oh, it's been longer than 16 years, but I tell you that database is geriatric to the point that it needs to be in hospice.
Well, I mean, that's something that I can talk with Sherry and Ted about.
Yeah, sadly, no. No. And I'm not saying that Ted couldn't move those things. Our IT department has a very clear, narrow response to things, and that is just not a priority for them right now. Even though we have said good data in, good data out.
Well,
you all want
is there a
to-
way, is there a way that we could, you know, hire a consultant that could work with ACE's IT department to make the conversion for us?
They won't. Which I'm
That's that
telling you,
question too.
every gray hair I have is either about this or some other moving 100-year-old organization along. So where ACE is now is that, which adds another layer of complexity to this, is that the CRM that we are using is not cloud-based, and they are moving towards the cloud-based version. So all of their focus is on that transition. Fellow stuff is not even on that radar. So it has just been an ongoing conversation. And we keep saying it. Fortunately, the membership director is helping us in partnering with us to kind of raise the alarm that this is 2,000 plus people worth of data that we don't have captured accurately. So, you know, maybe this is another one of those issues along with the board and the progressiveness of funding that I will just have to keep saying until I leave ACE. So it is what it is. I'm trying. That's all I can say is I am trying.
Is there advocacy that we could offer that you feel has not been in place or that you feel would make a difference? Because I feel like this is the same, it's the same conversation over and over. I've heard it in different spaces.
Right.
I've heard it at the finance and development table because it impacts how we approach giving and receiving gift. I mean, in different spaces. You sit in the middle. Unfortunately, that's a tough place to be. What could we do to be helpful both to you and to this cause that we jointly agree is important?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at the point where Ted is the head of ACE and he can kind of say what the focus is and where it needs to be, I think that's the best approach, because trying to get at it from the avenues that we have been trying, which has been working with our peers and a couple of layers above, their focus is very specific. And if the mandate is not given, it's just a request from our side. So, you know, I was being facetious with Rich, but I mean, Ted is the only person at this point who can say, I want this to be an area of focus, because we've tried to do it years and years the other way, and that's just not working.
I wonder, it seems like, I guess my last comment on this is we've made the ask as a request as though it's our need. I don't know that we've positioned it as what the value is for ACE.
We have.
I know you
have,
have, but we haven't aligned our positioning as ACE Council of Fellows to align with that. And I think there's some opportunity there.
Yeah. You know, the kind of selling point that I have been making so that it's not tied to the Fellows program, because you know, you kind of get seen as, oh, she's just here to talk about fellows. But, you know, when we talk about they're looking for people to serve as awards evaluators or, you know, potential board members, or all the things that they ask us for names for. If there were a place that we could put these things that benefits the larger organization, that would be great. You wouldn't have to come back to people. So we're trying to kind of move the conversation beyond just fellows. And it impacts the women's network as well. There are people in both of these areas. Their voices need to be heard. And the only thing that connects those voices is me on the Fellows Program side or my colleague on the Women's Network side. And if there are rooms where conversations are happening where we aren't, there's no way for anybody else to know that these people are out there even.
Right. I mean, right now it's all oral and mental history based on person rather than leveraging technology to house the data. Well, you know me, I'm not willing to take no easily. So I will figure out a way to circle back to this. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Anne, I sent you the 2 paragraphs of notes that I took. I'll send you the minutes under separate cover.
And I'll
Thank
send you the link as well too, Anne.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just 2 small edits in the minutes.
Okay.
All right,
terrific.
everyone. Thanks for your time today.
If you will.
Thank you.
Take care.